Welcome to Mistakes Over Failure. I'm Dr. Christine Crawford.
And I'm Leslie Wingo.
And today we are joined by Paulo Batista. Welcome, Paulo. If you could introduce yourself to our community.
Well, thank you for having me first. And I'm a man who's passionate about education. I believe that the best thing we can do in this world is give other human beings access to education. It is the most exponential thing that we can do. If you think about it, is the only social investment you can do that multiplies by itself. First of all, everything you give in terms of education, no one can take it away. Someone can steal your money, your clothes, your house, but no one can take away what you have learned. More than that, with what you learn, you can learn more. That's why it's exponential. With what you learn, typically, you can produce income and generate wealth for yourself. It allows you to feel better, to grow as a human being, but also to do better for other human beings. It's very typical to see in our learning centers. Once one of our students shines, they kind of allow other students to shine as well. And that's a famous quote, right? Mm-hmm. And more than that, if you think about it, we have failed with successive generations around education, right? We've failed in education, and we're still failing with education. But if we succeed in education, and I like to talk more about the opportunity of education than the problems of education, once you've given a mother and a father better education, they'll be able to educate their kids better. So nothing is more exponential than education. And that's why I've decided, with the help of YPO, to dedicate myself to that mission entirely. So that's who I am today. I am a man in a mission to solve the challenges of education in the world and bring that opportunity of uplifting billions of people, why not, through education.
I love it. I'm going to ask you 5 very quick questions.
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you from?
So I was born in a small country called the Luxembourg, but I consider myself Brazilian because I went back to Brazil at 6 months of age, and that's where I grew up.
What emoji do you use most often?
The heart.
Your favorite book?
My favorite book is Memories of Winston Churchill.
What was your first job?
My first job was as a teacher, and that says a lot about me.
Business acronyms, do you love them or hate them?
Business acronyms. I have a love-hate relationship with them.
Very fair. What led you to YPO?
God, I think. Okay. Magic, mysteries of the universe. That's one of the things that I'm most grateful for. Has completely changed who I am. I am who I am thanks to YPO in so many ways.
What's your favorite saying in Portuguese?
Well, it's actually in English.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It is. Where there's will, there's way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you talked about being a teacher first.
Yep.
And then I know you had as a dental business.
So my story is crazy.
Okay.
So I had this opportunity to be a teacher because I had the second highest grade in the university exams of Brazil, and the 5 top students were invited to be part of a volunteer test prep program for underprivileged kids. So I was a volunteer teacher, and that's where I got connected with the challenges of education and the opportunities of education as well. Because I was ready to face struggling students, right? Everybody knows that the public education system in Brazil is very bad. So I was ready to face kids with difficulties. But to my surprise, 90% of the students in my class couldn't even read. And they had a high school degree. Because the educational system in most developing countries just push kids along to improve the statistics around education. They just pass everybody along. With the excuse of being inclusive and comprehensive to their social vulnerabilities. They just pass everyone along. And you just have tens of millions of kids that receive a high school degree but can barely read and therefore cannot find a job. And then they don't understand why they don't find a job. They think they're the problem because they have the degree, so why don't they find a job? And that's when I awake myself to that situation, to that problem that not a lot of people know still today. When you look at the data around education, you see that very clearly. So in Brazil, only 9% of kids finish school knowing how to read a book. And that's publicly available data. The government just chooses not to talk about it a lot. Only 7% of kids know how to do the 4 basic operations of math. Only 50% can even read a sentence and understand what they're reading. And the U.S., it should be much better. So in the U.S., only 25% of kids know what every 10-year-old should know in terms of reading, writing, and math skills. The U.S. is facing a huge crisis in its educational system that is related to structural issues around the educational system. And that's why I'm going from here to there to open our first learning center in the U.S. But I started as a teacher. That was a question. And I went into finance. Okay. Finance is a great school for leaders. I started working for a Brazilian bank. Then I was hired by Goldman Sachs. Then I was invited to an entrepreneurial opportunity. I worked in a startup in 2006 when there were not a lot of startups going around. Early, yeah. That was an amazing opportunity. After that, I went to work for a private equity firm. So I was buying firms, selling firms. And then my destiny was, I guess, to be doing what I am doing now. Okay. But first, I think God wanted to train me with something less important for him. Okay. So I established an e-commerce company called Dental Kramer. It was actually a spin-off of a Brazilian healthcare company. And it started from zero in 2011 and grew to become a $300 million in sales business in 6 years. That's how I joined YPO. Okay. That company was acquired by an American Fortune 500 company called Henry Schein in 2016. And after that sale, I felt blessed and so grateful for everything that had happened to me in such a short period of time, right? I was still only 33 at that point in time, that I wanted to give back. And I wanted to give back in education because of my experience as a volunteer teacher. I knew that was what really matters. That's what's the most important thing that you can do for another human being. So I tried to find a project that was scalable, effective, and that focused on that problem of the basic skills, which is the biggest problem in Brazil, but also in the whole world. It's called the learning poverty issue. And I didn't find anything that was both effective, scalable, and focused on that problem. I said, how can this be clearly the biggest problem we have? And no one has an initiative or a project to try to address that, right? There are several initiatives that I found trying to help government do a better job, trying to improve government, right? But I, as most business people, tend to understand that government is not part of the solution, government is part of the problem many times. And yes, we need to help government, but we need to help government do and not wait for government to change, because government has some structural issues that are even political, that sometimes are beyond our control, right? So that was kind of the seed of the thought that led to the creation of Aliquest, which is my company now. And I initially never thought of dedicating myself fully to that, but then I got a few callings, and I realized that I was supposed to do that and decided to dedicate myself entirely to that forever.
So how do you go about, there's opportunity within government, to use your words, but opportunity with community and culture to change minds, hearts towards education. What was your process in doing that as well?
I believe that, yes, there are people in poor communities that are not convinced of the power of education, but I like to say that with reason, because they have been frustrated many times about the ineffectiveness of education. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of wealthy people tend to be a little judgmental of poor communities and think they don't value education, they don't want it, they don't pursue it. That's not what I see. I see people who are skeptical. I see people who self-sabotage. Yes, that exists. I see people with limiting beliefs. But deep down, everybody knows that education is the only way. And once you show them something effective that works, that transforms their lives, they buy into it. But we're also very pragmatic. I think one of the things that we realized, understanding the dynamic of poor communities, is that you need to be very clear on the job to be done that you're solving for those families. So we have three products, three solutions. One is an early childhood development center, which is also a nursery. So women need to find work. So yes, they appreciate that we're doing advanced cognitive development of their toddlers, but they also need a place to leave their kids. And we're solving that problem as well. The after-school tutoring goes the same way, or our summer camp program goes the same way. Yes, parents appreciate that we're doing advanced learning and helping their kids have an academic advantage, but we're also solving for another structural issue, which is the design of the school hours do not match the working hours of a working class family. And that's simply because when schools were designed, women were supposed to stay at home. So it was actually designed to fit the routine of a house mom, because then the kids leave at 3:30. Mommy has time to get the kids, take care of them before the bigger kid, the husband, arrives, and then she can take care of the bigger kid. That's how it was designed. Yeah. And the world changed. Single moms are now more common than structured families in many communities. Even when it's a structured family, the mother wants to work or needs to work, and they haven't changed the school dynamic. So that's a problem or an opportunity for us to solve, but use that not just for care and for playing time, which is what is mostly done in the US, for instance, but actually to recover the learning that the school system is not succeeding in developing in kids for many other structural reasons. And our third product is vocational training or labor reskilling, right? Mm-hmm. But we also focus on fixing those core reading, writing, and math skills, because deep down, when you look at the challenges for employability, it is directly related to challenges that people have in reading, writing, and math. It is directly related to that. If you look at most of the tests that are applied, even in operational level jobs, behind there's some sort of language skills or math skills. They call it something fancy, like critical reasoning or analytical skills, but it's really basic math and basic language skills. So, but adults need quick solutions. You're not going to convince them to go back to school. It's very hard, right? Because they already have a degree typically, but they haven't learned. So we realized that we need to have something very tactical to solve the employability issue, but behind it, we're assessing and fixing with short-term goals, reading, writing, and math skills to allow people to do better in those entry-level exams in any job application. So you really need to find another job to be done. You can't sell education as a dream in underprivileged communities because people have been fooled too many times. It's not that they don't see it or that they don't have the vision. It's just they have been fooled so many times that they don't believe it anymore.
Well, especially if you invest 12 years, right?
Exactly.
Going 5 days a week.
Exactly.
And then still find that you don't have what you need for the next step, right? How do you expect someone to think bigger than that? But how did you think about deciding to open your businesses in the U.S. as well? Because Brazil is huge.
Brazil is huge. Of course, as a Brazilian, we're very aligned to American culture, so we know what's going on in the U.S. all the time. We are under the American influence. So I always had a macro understanding of the dynamics of education in the U.S., but it was really the power of YPO. It was really the power of YPO. As I became a champion in YPO, I started attending global conferences of YPO. You start meeting people that are active in education in the whole world, but specifically in the U.S. And a few of those individuals that I connected with in the U.S. that are active in education, as they asked me about what I do and the problems I saw in Brazil, said, the U.S. is the same. Like, really? That bad? Yeah, the same. And then you start looking into it. And even more than that, I'm going into the U.S. with the direct help of 3 or 4 YPOs. that are doing just because I'm a YPOer and opening doors for me, helping me get started, serving me. So one of them is now a supplier of my company, helping us get started in the U.S. Magic of YPO. Couldn't do it without YPO.
It's interesting when you talk about these different communities and the culture around community and the complexity of those layers of culture and how things show up, generational stuff, current issues, same as it ever was kind of things. How do you look at that? Do you look at that community to community, or is there a similarity in all communities? How do you dig into the culture to understand what people are really facing?
That's a very good question. So now that I'm traveling more and more to explore the world, even beyond the Americas, I am starting to find that it's all the same deep down. But to answer you more specifically, I think one thing that I have in favor of us is that if you look at it, Brazil is very similar to the U.S. Historically, we're also stained by slavery, and we have all the consequences of slavery. We're also a country of immigrants. The difference is, what in the U.S. is truly a minority, in Brazil is a majority. So in the U.S., you may have a top 25% who's very privileged. In Brazil, you have a 1% that's very privileged. But when you look at the historical components of it, the cultural components of it, social components of it, there are a lot of similarities in where does the problem come from, right? Now, the system is very different. How the public system works and the dynamics of the system can be very different. And that's why localization is very important. And even in the US, like in Brazil, from community to community, there's a huge diversity. Brazil is not one country. Brazil is more like 15 different countries. And so is the US, right? But the secret sauce, one of the pillars of our secret sauce is we're not coming from outside and being the benefactor uplifting that community. We find talented people within that community, and they're always there. You have a lot of talented people in any community, right? And we get the most talented people from that community, and we give them visibility to help other people within that community. So the cultural translation ends up being very easy. And what we are is really a quality control process behind all that to make sure that it's really being well done, and maybe a coaching mechanism to those individuals in those communities. But we also provide them job security. We hire them. It's not like they're an entrepreneur and we're selling them a license to what we do. No, we hire them. We run the risk. We run the risk, which is important for you to do, right?
So it sounds like you're applying what you learned in business in terms of systems, right, and scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
To education.
Exactly.
So what is your dream?
My dream?
Yeah.
Well, if I were to put a number to my dream, I want to impact 10 million people, at least, over the next 10 years, because education is exponential, as I was explaining. If you change 10 million people through education, you change the world, because the multiplying effects of that are so large that it compounds to a massive transformation, right? So that is my goal, my first goal. And we're still at 100,000, so there's a long way to go, but we're getting there.
So when you think about your previous life, what did you learn from mistakes that you made in that life that you're using now to build your next chapter?
Well, I'm still making mistakes, right?
Perfect.
I tend to. So one of the things I learned is I love my mistakes, because we learn from our mistakes, right? So I do feel that my previous life was preparing me for my true purpose and my true mission, which is this that I'm doing now, right? So both my achievements and my mistakes were all preparing me and creating lessons and culture and repertoire for me to be doing what I'm doing now. And I'm still unprepared in a way. I'm still learning. So I'm trying to catch up.
let me ask, how do you instill or earn trust with educators, right? Because I think the relationship between business and education has been fraught in a lot of ways, and it is seen somewhat as transactional. So business pays attention to education when they need workers,
Yeah.
right? But they don't invest in it otherwise. Sometimes,
Yeah.
in a lot of instances. And so how do you build trust? And sometimes business can look down on education, right? That if you did what you were supposed to, then we could do what we needed to. And so how do you build trust when that relationship has not always been so smooth and there's no real reason for them to trust that you'll be here?
Well, so I'm a very positive person. This is something that you will learn about me. I'm very, very positive, right? So I don't see that. Okay. I see a lot of business people that really want to invest in education and just don't find a credible product to invest in education. Or look to the public schools in their community and they don't find a way to have meaningful investment there, right? And many do. There are a lot of companies that are investing in education for sure. But we tend to think that when you offer a company a product around education that can really have an impact in their community, they see more meaning into it. I think a lot of companies have thrown dollars into the public educational system and seen that money get lost somehow and not really be able to track the impact of that investment. And therefore, those sort of perceptions arise. But when you create a product like we've created, that you can, first of all, target the audience that they want to target, the kids of their employees or kids from a specific neighborhood by the factory, then they're more open to it. And they really buy into the power of education because every people that has success knows that behind their success was some form of education, either formal education or informal education. But they know that without knowledge, they were not going to be where they are. And educators, I think educators really admire business. They just don't understand it. And there's a reason why they became educators, right? So they fear it. They're afraid of it. They don't understand. And therefore, they don't know how to connect to business. We do face some prejudice from educators from being a for-profit entity. That does exist. But we partner with the educators that want to partner with us. And the ones that don't, we respect because we understand also that they had experiences that led them to believe the way they believe. And not all companies are good. Right. Some companies are bad indeed. Right. Capitalism is not perfect. Right. And so there's good reason to be suspicious of capitalism sometime. And we respect that.
Do the educators push back on you quite often, or is it, let's see what you're creating before we push back? Because I could see where there's trepidation on somebody new in the game trying to do these things, and we don't know you.
So what we've learned is let's do a pilot, and then you'll see.
Yeah.
And now after 7 years, we have data. Okay. So now it becomes easy, right? Because then we can show our data. But then I don't trust your data. Okay. so fair enough, right? There's a lot of fake data going around. So we do a lot of pilots. So we're growing very fast now in Brazil with government contracts that are usually decided by educators, right? In the beginning, that was almost impossible, right? They were very suspicious and skeptical of us. Now they're starting to see our reputation and they see other projects we've done that have massively impacted publicly available performance data of students. And so now it's easier because they have publicly available, credible data. That's not our data, it's governmental data that shows the impact we have. But still there's skepticism and that's normal. So what we learn is we do pilots. And with families in communities, we do free trials. Hey, do 1 month of free trial and you see for yourself. And not only is that more honest and more transparent and maybe the right thing to do, but also it's better for business. Gets to a lower CAC, talking about the acronyms you were mentioning, customer acquisition costs, because if we were to have salespeople good enough to convince a working class mother to sign a contract, a binding contract for their tuition, I'll probably be very expensive sales model. But with the free trials, I don't have salespeople. My teachers do the selling. And families just leave their kids for a month for free, and they see the results, and they don't go away.
It feels like part of it is transactional, where we can count a lot of things, and part of it is transformational. We will never be able to count those things that you're causing. Have you thought about some of the transformational things that will happen in the next 7 years, or let's just say your next opportunities in Denver, so 12 years from now?
One of the things that we're investing heavily is artificial intelligence. We are the most advanced use case of AI in education outside of China, because China is a heavy user of AI into education. And we're definitely seeing a lot of opportunities there, But we are a believer on the human factor behind education. And there's science to back it up. There's a lot of research that has been done. There's a human component, probably related to the mirror neuron, that science cannot fully understand, but that has a role in learning and education, right? There has a human connection. There's an emotional connection between human beings that enable learning, right? So it's still to be proven that a pure AI, machine-based solution can teach core skills. For people who are trained learners and self-motivated learners, they can learn from a book as they can learn from an AI. But for a kid or for an adult that struggles with reading, it's still to be proven. And we have a prototype for that. But you need to factor in mental health issues, social-emotional components. So it gets fairly complicated. If you have a great math game to teach math, that will work if there's an adult with the kid doing the motivational component and somehow engaging, at least initially, the student into that process. But if you're talking about vulnerable kids from vulnerable families, then you need something else. You need that human component. You need to kind of fill that void of love that kids need in order to allow themselves to learn. And that is something that I don't know if AI is going to be able to deliver love. That's what we're still need to
You will
see.
revolutionize the world if it can deliver love, because that goes way beyond education.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
What is your favorite thing about home, about Brazil?
It's probably one of the best places on earth. I've been around. I've traveled around, and I try to look at it from a distance, right? I'm not a nationalist. I'm not a, you know. You can have, people are just happy. You know, people are happy in Brazil, even when they're struggling and when they're poor. Most of us are very poor in Brazil. Even when we're struggling and we're suffering, it's a happy people. So it's good to be around happy people, right? I've lived in Europe for a while. Europe is wealthy, but they're grumpy. It's funny. The wealthier you are, it seems that it doesn't correlate with happiness very well. So Brazil is just a happy place. It's also a beautiful place. The food is amazing, and I guess it's my culture as well. So I connect to the culture, to the song. There's a diversity in our culture that does not translate into diversity in opportunity, to be clear. I'm not saying that Brazil is a racial democracy. That's one of the biggest lies that we have in the country. But at least in a cultural point of view, it is truly a melting pot of cultures, and we all share a same culture that comes from different races and different origins, and is really a blend. The unfairness behind that is that only on culture, not in access to opportunity. And there is a structural racism problem there. There are several issues in the country. But on the culture side, it is true. And I do like that culture, and I do feel that it's my culture. Yeah. And it's, I guess you all have a little bit of that through the music and the images that you get from what happens in the country. It is truly a magical place in that sense.
I have one more question for you. The name of the podcast is Mistakes Over Failures. Failure is when you do something over and over and expect the same result. Mistake is when you try something big and you maybe you mess it up, maybe you would have wished you would have done something differently. But what has been your favorite mistake that you've made?
The favorite mistake I made. You should have prepared me for that question.
No.
So I love all my mistakes because as I look back, I can see that all my mistakes have led to something good. There is not a mistake that I still regret. I have regretted mistakes for a time, but after sometimes, oh, okay, so that taught me that now enabled me to do this. So I see a lot of purpose and design in my mistakes, and I always try to follow my heart. I think the mistakes that I do regret are the moments, and usually it's in the present, when I'm not following my heart. And I think that's how God talks to us.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do a better job to listen very carefully and follow our intuition. And but I tend to love all my mistakes. There have been so many, and I've learned so much from them. I wouldn't be who I am if it weren't for my mistakes.
Well, Paulo, we are grateful that you have shared your love and heart with education, with Brazil, with us, and now that you're bringing a little sprinkle of that to the U.S.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us today, Paulo.
No, thank you. It was amazing.
Thank you.